Whenever I face a struggle or hardship, I find myself bottling it all up till everything blows up. However, I first try to pray. Second, I run to my husband, who's there for me 100%. But for some reason, his work or life gets in the way. Thirdly, I can run to my mom or my closest friends that I feel comfortable talking to.
Whenever I'm going through a struggle, oftentimes the people that I reach out to are my closest friends. I used to find it difficult to do so because I was scared of being seen as weak, but oftentimes it takes a strong person to reach out to someone and saying that you're struggling with something.
So I typically like to talk to my friends when I'm going through something, and that's because I feel like I can just be my most raw, unfiltered self when I'm around them, and I can just be as open and honest and upfront as I'd like to be when talking about something. As someone who used to just keep everything to themselves, I would just feel so overwhelmed, and I just would not want anyone to feel that way, and no one should have to go through something alone.
When I'm going through a struggle or hardship, I find that I typically need to take time for myself just to process and figure out my emotions, figure out the situation, and then I spiral into a black hole of calculations and how all the possible outcomes, and then start doing some sort of cost benefit analysis. But I think that speaking with someone after I've done all of that is really helpful, because a lot of times I know what my options are, or I know what I think I should be doing, but speaking to someone helps me just feel like I'm not crazy, the feelings I'm feeling are valid, and that just to have a sounding board from someone you trust is really comforting and reassuring, especially when you're really going through it.
Yes, I absolutely talk to people when I'm going through stuff. I didn't used to. I used to hold it all in, and it sucked. It just prolonged the agony and the pain. So thankfully I have learned it is better to get it out than to let it fester. I usually go to my husband first, and my inner circle of friends and family. That's my go-to. But sometimes the problem's bigger, or it requires a higher level of expertise. And that's when I talk to a medical doctor, coach, a therapist, whoever is the best suited for that job, for that particular problem. The scariest part for me is starting. It's the being vulnerable and opening up in the first place to say, hey, I'm broken. I suck right now. That's the worst. That's the scariest part. But interestingly enough, not once I do break that ice, it also gives me the biggest relief in that moment. There's something about it, just really feels like it physically lifts off my chest. And it certainly makes it real, but it also makes it lighter. And there's going to be a light at the end of the tunnel. There's a way to start working through it, which is very comforting.
When I'm struggling and going through something, oftentimes I'll take some time to myself, to sit with myself and kind of see how I'm feeling and see what's going on within myself. I'm lucky enough though that I can go to my wife Elizabeth and be able to talk through anything and be very open and honest. I also have some close friends who I've known all my life, and I'm lucky enough that I can be open and vulnerable with them as well. Get some honest feedback, honest criticism, whatever I need to help me work through it as well. And I even have resources such as my therapist as well, who I can go to for kind of a more formal opinion as well. Usually I'll be able to use all of this together to kind of figure out what works for me and what works best for me in a particular situation to get through it.
I have never been an open person, so I know that reaching out to people can be really hard, but I've learned that just ranting about whatever you're going through and getting it off your chest can feel a lot better. And I personally like to go to one of my friends or one of my brothers, and sometimes even just being distracted by conversation helps. There is always going to be someone who is willing to lend an ear to you, and sometimes people can relate to whatever you're going through, and that can make you feel a lot better about it. So reaching out to people is definitely something that has helped me.
When I'm going through a hardship, I'll talk to someone. Usually I'll talk to a friend from school. When I talk to someone, sometimes they can also relate, and it makes me feel like I'm not alone. Sometimes they can also say something that helps calm or slow me down, or help me with my hardship. I think it's unhealthy to keep your problems to yourself, because everyone has their ups and downs in life, and it's completely healthy and normal to reach out to someone for help if you really need it.
Whenever I struggle in life, in whatever, I find myself closing in from withdrawing myself from all people close to me. I don't feel comfortable sharing my problems with other people. It doesn't make me feel good, and sometimes I think that it's better off that I work on my problems by myself. But when I do get the strength to talk to people, I find that my parents are really good listeners, and they give me good advice on what to do and how I can look at the situation differently to make things a bit better.
When I'm going through a hardship, I try to handle it myself, but if I really need help, I'll ask family and friends who I'm close to that I can talk to in person. Even when things seem simple or have obvious answers, sometimes we just need someone to talk to or others to talk to who can offer us different perspectives, or perhaps remind us of things we might be overlooking.
If I'm struggling with an issue, I do typically try to handle the issue myself. My next step after that is to pray about it. I talk it over with God and try to come to some resolution that way. And then if I'm still continuing to struggle, my next step after that is normally to talk the issue through with my husband. He generally has a slightly different approach to various topics, and so I find that it's helpful to bounce things off of him, talk it over with him, and get a slightly different perspective. And then normally among those three options, I find that I get most issues resolved.
When it comes to any problem in life, I'd say that I try to figure it out on my own, because at the end of the day, I want to be a person who can figure it out and get through the adversity and the obstacles that life throws at you. But a lot of times I find myself lost. So in those moments, I like to contact close friends, maybe my girlfriend, my parents especially, because they are wise. And all my aunts and uncles, they all help me out during the rough times, so yeah.
When I'm having a hard time or struggling with something, I talk to someone. I have a therapist that is not the regular one. It's a quantum therapist that helps me free all those negative feelings and thoughts.
Yeah, when I'm going through a hardship or a struggle, I talk to someone, and it's not the same person all the time. It's generally friends or family. But I don't seek them out usually, but when they'll ask, how are you, or what's wrong, I'll usually mobilize the courage to give them a really honest answer, a more honest answer than maybe they were expecting. Too often we just say, I'm fine, or we cover it up and we make it up and we move on, but I try to wait for someone to ask, how are you? And then I give them a brutally honest answer. And that's proven to be very helpful, as opposed to keeping it all inside.
So whenever I'm going through some hardships, or if I'm struggling through something, I usually go to prayer first. I pray to God, and I kind of lay it all out to Him, tell Him what I'm feeling, what I'm going through, and kind of pray for wisdom, for guidance, which usually leads me to reaching out to someone to talk to, and that usually is a friend, especially a friend who has gone through the same things I have, or has gone through some struggles or hardship of their own. So I'm usually more comfortable talking to that friend, because I feel like they could understand more of what I'm going through, the situation I'm in, and could offer real valuable advice or insight, or even, just to talk to them and pray with them.
When I'm going through some type of stressful situation in my life and I need someone to talk to, most of the time I talk to my wife first, because her and I see things in a different light. She has a different lens on how she views things, and it's sometimes good for me to hear that perspective, so that way I could rethink how I'm looking at things, how I'm thinking about things, and how I react or act towards certain situations. On other situations where I want a more unbiased perspective, I may look to a therapist, because I do talk to a therapist on occasion, and know that they're going to be unbiased. They're going to ask more questions. They're going to dig a little bit deeper to understand why I'm feeling the way I'm feeling, why I'm thinking the way I'm thinking. And then the suggestions and recommendations they provide will come from an unbiased perspective, and that's what I'm looking for in those situations.
So when I'm in struggle or if I'm in hardship, do I talk to someone? Absolutely, absolutely. So oftentimes just talking to someone helps me get the answer. It's the weirdest thing, I know, it sounds crazy, but just voicing my experience out loud, many times I hear the answer come. But if I don't, my spiritual teacher, that's who I usually go talk to, my spiritual teacher will ask just the right questions to make me think, give me a different perspective on what I'm going through. So yes, absolutely talk to somebody.
When I'm going through a struggle or an issue, do I reach out to someone and talk about it? I'm an only child, and I think probably going back to my childhood, I don't think I always had someone that I was really comfortable talking to. I've probably not been very good at it for most of my days, but I'm aware of it. I'm conscious of it now, so I'd like to think I've done a better job with my wife, with very close friends, of talking about things that really do get to me, making sure that I'm clear about what issues are, and trying to do it as early as possible before it becomes a big boiling, situation. I haven't always been comfortable doing it, and I haven't always done it, but I think I'd like to think I'm getting a little bit better at it.
When I'm struggling personally, I don't like to talk to people because I feel like I'm more comfortable dealing with the situation on my own. And then once I reach a certain point where I feel like I need to involve someone, I'd much rather involve my close friends or my boyfriend rather than my parents and family.
When I'm going through struggles, I like to process things on my own first. And so I go inward, and I like to feel whatever I need to feel without the influence of anyone. And then I pray, which obviously happens a lot. Then I write in my journal, which has become almost a routine and a very regular practice for me. Then the first time I start reaching out to anyone would be obviously towards my husband, and then a close friend. Finally, I talk to my therapist, whom I see pretty much regularly, either weekly or every other week, depending on what my needs are. Now, this has not always been the case. Almost like half of my life, I never really reached out to anyone for help, for many reasons. Either I didn't know how to express myself, or I didn't know who to come to, someone who would just listen and understand what I was going through. I didn't necessarily want a solution or someone fixing my struggles. It's almost just I wanted someone to just listen to me and be there for me, which was hard at the time for me. And those were the days that I was also going through deep depression and anxiety. And so for the most part, I struggled on my own, and I really kept everything to myself because I didn't know how to. But I have come a long way, and now I ask every help I can get when things get really hard.